it's common sense.
Well,
That you don't need
so
two
you're saying-
witnesses to a child being raped. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that would never happen, no, I understand. But there's other bigger factors too, like anybody can say anything then, you know. But I don't know what their reasoning was, I'd be interested.
But you have to distinguish between a sin and a crime,
That was my childhood
right?
name.
So
And actually, I
so
was
to
known as
say,
Ricky until
regardless
I
of what the reasoning is, how can you have a rule
congregation, and
that they
that's why
basically
it's
invoke,
about
oh, two witness rule.
that I
You know,
stopped.
it doesn't matter if it's a child, it could be
Because
even a
it's
woman who was raped by somebody. You know, they,
Well, I
oh,
thought, you know.
it's like a card they play, two witness rule.
Also,
Nothing you can do. There's no, you have a second witness? No? Okay.
Well, yeah,
And
we'll see how
there's
they-
cases, the reason why there was a case where the Candace Conti, they lost the lawsuit. I don't know if you're familiar with Candace Conti. But
I know somebody who's treated.
the whole issue there was they already knew about the guy who was doing the abuse to her. And she went to the elders and they basically didn't do anything, but they already knew that he had abused other children.
Yeah.
And so where was the two witness rule there? That's why they lost the lawsuit.
Yeah, okay. And I don't feel sorry for them for that. You know, when stuff like that goes on, like I have no sympathy for the organization having to pay millions of dollars. I don't. You know,
So-
they should be. You know, if there's that kind of a miscarriage of justice, then you know, and it's not necessarily that the organization did that. They're protecting, you know, their guy.
But their
The
policies,
other-
but their policies created that scenario. That's the issue.
Well, they already had a two-witness rule, they should have applied it. See, one of the problems is bodies of elders don't follow the instructions that they're given. And I've seen that.
But
I've
under
been
the
to
old
court cases
rules,
with
they
it.
weren't encouraged to. They weren't encouraging people to go to the police.
No, they weren't.
They would use the line, "Oh, we'll bring reproach on
Yeah,
Jehovah and the
yes, they were,
organization.
yeah.
We don't want it in the media."
Well, and it's more than
So-
that, because if they broke a confidence, and that's one case in the States where the lawyer did that, where it wasn't mandatory, they went to they went to the police and he sued them for breach of confidentiality with that church thing. So it's not that simple legally.
I'm not saying there are no complications, right? And of course, some countries have mandatory reporting, some don't, and so on.
And if you report it when it's not mandatory, that's why we do the anonymous phone call.
I'm not sure they accept anonymous phone calls. I think there's an issue behind that too.
The police?
They don't accept anonymous phone calls for those types of things. You have to identify yourself, and if you're putting forth that kind of claim, that it can't be done anonymously.
Oh, you can though. You
Okay.
can. Yeah,
I guess it depends on
like for instance, when
depends on the country or the province or the
Yeah,
state.
yeah,
but,
yeah, because for
but there are
instance,
instances where that's not acceptable.
there's even
to
or if you see something
giving
going
tip,
on, where you
tip
don't.
or something.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to give your name or address or anything like that. You can make it in. I did it. I phoned it in, but I thought I knew a guy who was a bank robber. And I didn't give my name or address and anything. They said, okay, they took the information, and, you know, I don't be involved in it, and that's it, you know. So there is, you know, but like you say, it depends on the situation, the locality, and stuff like that. But like for instance, when I knew that elders weren't going to do something about it, I phoned the legal department. The legal department says phone the children's aid.
Yeah.
You know, get somebody over there because they weren't doing it. And the problem would have been a real problem.
But when you look at the culture, the environment, why is, like you just said, the elders weren't going to do anything about it? But why not?
Because they were lazy.
Okay, but
What they
what
said
created what created that environment or that culture?
It's not an environment. It was some bodies of elders don't do what they should be doing, and it creates a problem all across the board. Like these guys, the reason they didn't call, it was just too lazy. They said, well, this guy's, you know, molesting his daughter. Well, he's moving soon, so we'll just, it'll be their problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the brother phoned me and said, these guys aren't going to do anything. I said, I'll phone this legal department. And there was no two witnesses. No two witnesses, and they said phone the cops.
Yeah. So I mean,
And then the Catholic,
where does your love of neighbor and fellow man and brother come into play there? Because then you have an issue. Like it's interesting how far they'll go to do a return visit or go out in the ministry and do all those hours because you can count that time, right? But you can't count the time that you have to deal with this whole thing. They probably are just overwhelmed. they're probably spread too thin, and it's just one more problem that they have to deal with. That they're moving out the next people.
Well,
but
you're saying that.
I think it's I think they've been
yeah.
stripped of their humanity at that point, because I could never do that. I don't care
Well,
what the situation is.
What if you would lose your house for being sued? What if you were sued? People are losing millions of dollars. What if they sued you for breach of confidentiality?
You know TTC's there? Yeah.
I say
Yeah, you
the
say
scripture.
that now?
The scripture says if a man knows the right thing to do and doesn't do it, it's a sin.
Yeah.
But
So if I felt like I did the right thing, if it costs me a house, it costs me a house.
It's easy to say.
Okay.
Talk is cheap, you know. Most people wouldn't do that because, you know, there's still the legal aspects of it and stuff like that. You have to obey Caesar and stuff. So are you willing to go to jail for it? You know, are you willing to lose your house for it? For your
If
family?
it protects another child from being molested,
It's
probably
a nice
yes.
sentiment. But how many, is that a practical sentiment to impose on everybody? You know, it's a nice idea.
I'd rather go to jail for
Me too.
for something righteous than to go out in the ministry and pretend to count time and
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe we
I
would.
mean people do
But
all
you
kinds
couldn't
of
ask other
people
to do
do
that.
people do all kinds of things that they do to help the community and this and that.
Yeah.
But
But that's a big, that's different, you know. So it's kind of a judgment call based on the situation.
I'm not
I
like I
agree
said
with-
like I said I'm not saying it's not a complicated issue, but
It is,
but at the same time, I think if you weigh out the percentages, you know, where does it balance out? Okay, yeah, like out of all of those cases, what percentage of there could you have a confidentiality issue where the people would actually sue you and so on because you reported that?
Well, ones that ask you not to, for instance, and that's a lot of them. How many women who are raped go to the police? Most of them don't.
Well, because they have to go live with their husband the next day.
Well, not necessarily, no. Well, I know a sister in the congregation we were. She was raped, but she didn't go to the police. Simply for the same reason everybody else does. Nobody wants the notoriety. You can get a peace bond and to have your husband away from you. People do that, but nobody wants to be on the stage and have that notoriety. And that's why most of them. That's the single most important reason why most of them don't. They don't want to be grilled about their whole past life. They want the notoriety and have everybody view them from now on as the girl who was raped.
Now,
You know, there's a whole stigma attached to
in that case, like
That's
if
bad.
if that's what the individual wants, then then that's a judgment call at that time. But I think
But as a policy not to, that's different. Yeah.
but I think that the mindset should be that we really need to call the police here. That's unfortunately not the mindset.
Well, it is where it's
Mandatory.
mandatory.
But where it's not mandatory, it's,
You're beating a dead horse again.
No, he makes a good point, and I agree with some of that. Yeah, it sounds good, but it's more complicated than that. It's a simplistic view. Sure, it does. You know, I mean, no children should ever be starving. You know, you should give all our food and all your money to starving children in India because that's the right thing to do. But how many people do that? Would you do that? Is that what you do? Like nobody does
we have
that.
people here that are starving.
Yeah, and you give all your money to them and live in a box. You know, it's nice to say stuff, but the reality is a different story, you know.
But it's different when you know the person, right? It's hard to help somebody that you don't know versus somebody you've known or you've grown up with, and you know
Well, it's
something
kind
has
of splitting
happened.
hairs to say that. It's wrong one way or another.
Oh, I don't disagree, but I'm just saying, especially if you know the person, it'd be surprising that you wouldn't feel motivated
Yeah, no, it's
to
true.
do something about it, especially if you see them 2-3 times a week and they
Yeah.
come to you with an issue and you just sort of fluff it off.
And I think historically the elders haven't been trained to do that. You know, they're trained to like help people spiritually, but as far as all that stuff, I mean, it's not that new. It's just become out in the forefront. Like,
And I agree that the policies have changed and they have gotten better,
yeah, and
right,
maybe
over
get
time, and
better.
they've been, it's probably mostly because they've been forced to,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
just through
Bye.